Kevin Gore, welcome to the Cofounders. It's good to have you
Hey,
on.
great to be here. Good to see you guys again.
You too.
I know I was ahead of you guys, so I think you're going to know me better than I know you.
Hmm.
But yeah, looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because you were 1 year ahead of me, right? And then two ahead of James, I'm
yes.
guessing.
We were never in the same community.
Or were
Yeah,
you 2 years ahead of me, Kevin?
too, because we were not ever in the same.
Oh,
Because you were a
you're
humanist
right.
already when I became a novice.
If
Oh,
I directed your chant classes, I was 2 years ahead.
Yep, you did.
okay,
You did do that. Speaking
okay.
of
Yeah,
which, have you kept up with chant or singing?
yeah, man. I went to Notre Dame, and I was in
Congrats.
the Basilica choir there, and then
Wow.
I flaked after 6 months, and then I'm in the like a little schola choir here at our parish, and get to cantor at masses and things maybe like once a month. So yeah, I've kept up with it.
That's
That's
super
pretty
cool.
cool. Do you
Yeah,
still play the trumpet?
but in like I could, but no,
Because
no.
you
I
were really good.
I loved it, but I don't put in the time.
Mhm.
I enjoyed the performing, but yeah, ever since I've gotten back, I just haven't made the investment.
Yeah,
Life's
Yeah,
moving a little too fast for trumpet at the moment.
yeah, yeah.
I
Okay.
hear you, man.
Um, okay, so you were 2 years ahead of us, or 2 years ahead of Spencer. When did you end up leaving the Legion?
So I left Legion in 2017, so about 5 years, coming on
Oh,
6 years ago. Yeah.
oh, that
5, 6 years.
recent.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in for 14 with the Apostolic School. I was in for 14 straight years.
Wow,
Whoa.
that's
Yeah,
crazy. That's
Wow.
yeah. That
So
makes
wait,
sense
what
because
year did you start as an apostolic? Were you
2003. Yeah, I
yeah,
was a ninth grader
ninth grade? Okay, okay.
in New Hampshire.
that's
Wow.
funny. That's
Sorry.
crazy. Because I just know like most of the people that are like from my grade have left like after like 5 years. Like that was after ICAS pretty much everyone left within 3 years. Um,
Yeah,
that's when
I
everything
guess I was a little slower making up my mind. Yeah,
everyone has their own time, and
and look, I think if I had left any sooner, it would have been probably for the wrong reasons.
okay.
And yeah, when I left, I think people asked me why I left, and I realized I just wasn't happy.
Mhm.
And I wasn't happy a lot of the time. Um, like I was proud that I was doing God's will, but I was convinced it was God's will. And then, being deeply unhappy right before my final vows, I was kind of telling my vocation story to a couple of the general counselors, and they both told me, like, man, a lot of external signs, but it doesn't really seem like you need this. And I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, so like, do you want to be a legionary? And I was like, if it were up to me, no, but God wants it, so I got to do it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when I left, everything had kind of lined up for me to realize like this is the best case scenario. The constitutions had been reapproved, the Reagan Christie statutes had been reapproved. A lot of the enthusiasm was back, like pre-founder enthusiasm, but it like healthy. It
Mhm.
wasn't like we're the best in the church. It was like we're doing great things for Christ. There's a difference.
Yeah.
I was in a really supportive community, great superiors at the time. Um, I was working in the general directorate, crushing my first year of theology, like a 9.9 out of 10, the Italian system.
Wow.
So things were going really well. And despite all that, it just wasn't. I thought maybe it was the whole issue with the founder that was causing a lot of my whatever, but yeah, I left at a good time.
What was it?
And
Sorry.
go for it. I
No,
talk way.
if it, no, 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 I love it. And like, what do you think? If it wasn't the founder, was it like the rules or something? Because for me, it was like kind of a lot of the intensity of the rules. But
Oh yeah, the rules were definitely intense, but I'm a pretty docile guy. It didn't bother me as much.
sure.
Uh, what it was for me is I just wanted to be married, man. Um, and I remember I think the first like inkling that I didn't want to be a legionary or a priest anyway was I was working in a school up in Michigan, which is why I live in Texas now. But I was working up in Michigan, so cold, and I those kids like I really wanted to take care of those kids and make sure they were growing and happy. And there were a lot of kids, you meet their parents, and you're like, man, but at the end of the day, at 4 o'clock, they go home. And I had to accept the fact that I'm just a piece of the school puzzle. I'm not really a big part of these kids' life at the end of the day. And I wanted to be able to give more and to be, even if I'm able to serve like less people, to really pour myself into, somebody that I know loves me back in the same way. And yeah, love for Christ and all that, I get it, but I experience it through my wife now, and vice versa. So
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How long have you been married?
I was married back in September.
Oh,
So
congratulations!
yeah, it was
Nice.
awesome.
Nice.
How long had y'all been together prior?
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. I left Legion 2017. I was a youth minister for a year because that's what you do.
Yep.
And then,
Yeah.
in the meantime, I was studying for business school. And then I did 2 years at Notre Dame, graduated in 2020, full pandemic. And then drove from, basically Chicago all the way down to Dallas. And with everything I owned in my little, 2003 Hyundai Elantra. So
Yep.
I looked like a hobo, living out. Just barely made it in the bank in time to get my deposit, and then slid into my apartment and got the night there. But that was 2020 pandemic era. And then I met her a week later. So literally, I see a lot of guys that would leave, especially after a long period of time, and gone right for a relationship. And, that's a choice. It's fine. But it has consequences. And so I decided I really want my education, my career to be lined up, and to know what my hobbies are and who my guys are, before I really went for the whole marriage path. And so I'm glad I did that. But yeah, it was crazy. 2020 May, my career's in line. I've been working with this company for a year. I started as an intern in business school and worked for them through the rest of my internship. Loved it. Great culture. Then May 2020, I'm in Dallas. It's where I want to be. And career's there, the degree's there, the hobbies were there, and then boom, she just came out of nowhere.
Almost kind of fell in your lap.
That's
right?
so cool.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it was really a lot of things lined up. I don't take credit for all of it. But,
that's beautiful, man. Yeah. Now, sorry to interrupt. What is the company, career, hobbies? What does that look like?
Well, yeah. So I was talking to some people about this, like, in the Legion, you're trained to be super focused on your mission. And so it's like priesthood, but then all of a sudden you're like not priesthood. And so either you're in kind of this like identity crisis phase, or you're just like marriage. And so like the first woman with the short skirt that kneels in the church in adoration, you're like, that's my wife. It's like, I think that's like,
you're calling out a lot of people right now.
We're all guilty of it, and it's yeah. It happens.
It happens.
Oh, it happens.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. I even had a consecrated reach out to me as she was leaving, saying that we should get married, and we'd only said hello twice, like ever.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah. Hey, if you want to blast her name out there, just put it out. I'm kidding.
Oh. Oh man. No.
Yeah. No,
but I've written a consecrated before, so it's like it's like you get out and you're like, you've had this mission for so long, and all of a sudden it's been replaced, and so you want to do it right. You want to execute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw, that I was coming out with a bachelor's degree. No, excuse me. I had an associate's degree, valid in the state of Connecticut. But I had 260 credits, so it was kind of like, how does that work? Yeah. I only did the 2-year philosophy program in Rome. So with novitiate, 2 years of humanities, 2 years in Rome, and a year of theology in Rome, 7 years of schooling, university level, no relevant degree. But so knowing that, I was like, okay, I got to start a career, but I can't do it with an associate's degree, at least not something, satisfying. And I wanted to do something where I could still be of service, but actually be of service, I love Mission Youth. I run Mission Youth in Dallas, so I'm not knocking Mission Youth, but Mission Youth is really focused on the experience of the missionaries, not so much the long-lasting, world-changing impact, right? And that's a very general statement, and there's different classes, whatever, but you understand me.
Sure.
So I really wanted to do something that would be, impactful. And to do that, I knew I needed to be in a position where of influence, right? And my path was business. So I got home. My parents put me up for a year. The condition was I had to work, right? I had to have a job to live at home for a year. So I appreciate that with them. So yeah, worked for a year, and I thought business is the way to go. I got to get into Stanford or Harvard or Wharton. Those were my three, because they're in the top 7 business schools. I was like, I got to infiltrate because I'm a missionary. Got to get in there. So 3 days after I got back to the States, I spent like 10% of my stipend on study materials for, 10% of my walkaway pay, let's say from the Legion, on like study materials for the GMAT, the entrance exam for business school. And yeah, started grinding on that, got a great score. I'm just good under pressure. That's really all that comes down to. But yeah, I started writing schools, never heard back from Wharton, Stanford, or Harvard, but Notre Dame sent me something in the mail. And when I went to Notre Dame, they got the football thing going on, and they've got a really solid campus. But what impressed me was I went to just a daily mass, like 12 o'clock mass, 12:05 mass. And it was a very well celebrated mass, like very traditional. But also there were 2 priests hearing confession the entire mass. And then there was just a line of young students going out the door. And I was like, I had to recognize that like I needed that because, I think you leave such a highly regulated environment, like lots of rules, and then you're just turned loose,
Yeah.
and no real habits. Like you've lived a life of virtue, but you haven't. I don't think you can fully take credit for virtuous acts if the conditions are so, let's say, concocted, right? Like you have so much external support. So all of a sudden you're a fish in the ocean, and you're like, okay, there are some, reefs that I just can't chill in, right? So yeah, that was business school. Notre Dame was a great choice. Got a master's in business administration,
Great.
and yeah. So now I'm working for a company called SLK1. It's a small consulting firm, and we just go business to business. And the typical type project is we go in, we do a full assessment of like their leadership and how they run their operations and their finances and their IT platform and all those things. And then we say, all right, you guys, if you do this, this, and this, you're gonna grow 2x. And so then, but we can help you with these two. Not this one. You might want to call somebody else. And then we get in there and we like get our hands dirty and fix, what they got going on. So it's a great way to help people. I'm learning a lot, and I want to take that eventually and bring it to the nonprofit world. But for now, I'm learning. As much as
That's a really cool goal. Bringing it to nonprofit event. Do you have any specific companies, nonprofit you'd want to work with, or?
Yeah, actually. Well, it's exhausting. Have you tried to start a business? I mean, you run a podcast, okay? So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Anything that you want to start, it's just that much more effort. So I haven't really found an organization that I feel like I want to be a part of, except for one, and that is a program at Notre Dame called, I think it's called the Meyer Frontlines program, or it's business on the front lines. Anyway, the goal is we're going to go to a post-conflict country and analyze it from a business perspective and see how we can rebuild that group with whatever issue they're facing. So like a medical missions, but with business. And
that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, I got to participate in that. We spent so much time, like a full semester, just studying. My task was Honduras. We had like a team go to Romania to understand sex trafficking in Romania and how the money flows so that we can find where to break that chain and economically, right?
Yeah.
Or another team went to Colombia and they were seeing how they could undercut drug trafficking in Colombia, where they could, from a business perspective, because there is a lot of money involved in how can we break those chains. So mine was Honduras and working with a company called Food for the Poor. And they come to us and they said, we're really good at providing food and clothing and medicine and housing for these people. We can help them survive, but we don't know how to help them thrive. And so our job was to go in, get to know them, understand what their skills were, what their interests were, and propose a bunch of businesses that they could start as a community to help them lift themselves out of poverty, which was really cool, And we were looking at like, okay, they make $8,000 a year as a community USD, and they need to make $1 million as a community to get out of that situation of poverty. And so, even the things they were doing, they were losing money. And we were like, well, we could just modify those skills. And then now they're pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars. So yeah, really cool organization, really cool project. Something I might be interested in.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. I see Jacob just popped in here.
Yeah. He has children and a family. And Spencer and I are both bachelors, living it up. So we always have time. And we never have commitments or obligations or anything. So we can't really relate. We don't know what it's like.
Yeah. Well, this is new to me. I don't have kids yet, so.
Right. Maybe, but
so we talked about career. I basically help companies for a living, take stress out of people's day. It's great. Education was the MBA. Hobbies. There's the singing that's going on. I took up boxing when I was at Notre Dame.
Nice.
And man, I love it. It's so fun. But other than that, it's just like trying to find a house and, pay bills and whatnot. So
yeah.
You're in Dallas, you said?
In Dallas, Texas. Yeah.
Isn't it really expensive there to find like housing?
So okay. First of all, standard of living, right? Like the cost of living is basically like 4 cents over the national average. So
okay.
And there's no state income tax. So
that
do with that.
There is that.
But the housing market is terrible right now because it has a very similar climate. Dallas specifically has a very similar climate to like San Diego, Southern California. Yeah. And a lot of Californians are coming over, selling their house, paying in cash way over value.
Yeah.
Having enough left over for a Lamborghini and $200,000 in the bank and getting more house than they had before. So it's a tough time real estate.
Yeah. I've heard from friends in Austin and Dallas that they're like, we were thinking about buying a house and now we're flooded with Californians who have too much money and you put in an offer and they put in 50,000 more in cash and it's like
in cash and they close the day after. It's
yeah. Hey, good luck though. I believe in you.
It'll settle down.
It'll settle down. You'll in the right time you'll get it. Did you ever think in the Legion that one day you would have to worry about, the vicissitudes of life and, finding a career, finding a person to be with and,
did I think that was a possibility? I'll tell you what, like I was talking to a lady, my wife's brother just headed off to seminary in Spain. Great guy. His name's Esteban. Esteban's headed off to seminary and I'm sitting across from this lady and she's telling me, she says, oh yeah, we got to pray for him so much. It's so hard. And I was like, no, it's not. And she said, yes, it's very hard. And I said, no, I've lived it for literally 11 years. It is the simplest form of existence. Like you don't have to worry about, you work hard, but you miss a deadline or you are lazy one day. It's not the end of the world. Like nothing, very little consequences, right? You're kind of like you're almost like a luxury good, like if you don't have it, you kind of miss it, but it's like your life goes on.
Yeah.
But no, I can't, if I miss a paycheck, I have to think about, moving money around to make rent, it's like, it's a whole, and I think with the way people spend nowadays and like, if a quarter of your money is going to pay off debt, like credit card interest and whatnot, man, the number of people walking around with a Rocky and Bullwinkle like cloud over their head, just the financial stress.
Hello.
I mean,
it's not great.
Yeah,
it's life. that's life. And, we have to think about, oh, I broke a window. All right, brother, your penance is to pray 3 Hail Marys.
Yeah.
It's easy, bro. It's easy.
We'll get a benefactor to cover this. It's no problem.
Yeah. I mean, we went through hard times, and it was so cold in Cheshire.
Yeah.
With the windows, they got the windows replaced. But yeah, they were like, it wasn't like we were trying to be heroic and whatever. We were just broke at the time, so we could only afford 2 hours of heating. I mean, that's really what it was. So yeah, people talk about how hard it is inside being a priest, but it's the same. If you're whatever you're called, like it's what you can handle.
Well, is your wife's brother trying to be a legionary or?
No, he's with the Neo-Catechumenal Way. So different movement. Actually, it's really interesting. I have experience with, movements because of my experience in the Legion. She grew up in one. And so when I told her I was an ex-seminarian, normally with Catholic girls, that works pretty well.
Yeah.
But for her, it was a red flag. It's true. You leave a very structured environment and you're a loose cannon for a while until you figure out who you are.
It's true.
Everybody has their path, and it's some people go way off the deep end and stay there, and other people, kind of, I'm going to call them bubbles, not a bad thing, but they'll go from like the Legion bubble to a very traditional bubble, and so they kind of miss that, let's say, dip. But I think when I came out, my friends were like the Cathedral Youth Group or like the Young Adult Group, and then I was a seminary, or not a seminarian. I was a youth minister, so like all my coworkers were Catholic. The kids I was working with Catholic. The Young Adult Group was Catholic, and I thought, oh my gosh, I could not imagine meeting someone that's not Catholic. Like, how would I even talk? Like,
how would I relate? Like, what?
Yeah, like,
there's nothing. It's a non-starter.
Yeah. So one thing I really appreciate about Notre Dame was they focus on values over labels. And so, like, okay, I can connect with this guy because he's generous and he cares about other people genuinely, even though he's a self-branded agnostic or like a Buddhist or whatever. So that helped me kind of see the person more than the religious label.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's good to find like new ways to interact with people who are different. That's really cool.
It's important.
Yeah,
it's like the
tolerance
issue in the country right now.
Yeah,
true. Yeah. That's really true.
So you left in 2017.
Yeah.
Joined in 2003.
Yeah.
That's a significant amount of time. When you left, did you ever consider any other seminaries, or were you like just the life in general?
Well, yeah, no. I think my discernment in the Legion was a discernment out of priesthood, right? Like and part of that was just because I always wanted to be married, but I branded it as a temptation. I thought it was like,
a bad thing.
A bad thing, yeah. But my discernment. Okay, so I was getting ready for my final vows, and it was April Fool's Day. Okay, my first. Yeah, 14 years, right? I'm thinking, well, amazing. April 1st, I have this meeting with the vicar general. So the number 2, they just started this thing in the Legion in 2017 where you want to do your final vows. Okay. The council has to accept you, the general council, but they didn't want it to be just like reports from your 2 prior superiors. Because what if they had issues and you didn't, and then they're going to deny you just because of what they said. So they had every applicant for, final vows meet with 2 of the general counselors so that they can go back. And so you had a chance to say whatever you need to say. And, I had bad blood with this superior, whatever. So I was like, okay. And I told him my whole vocation story. I'm with the vicar general, April 1st. And he looks at me and he's like, you fool. No, not your fool. But like, he was like, if, from our side, no red flags. But if I were you, I would take a second look because it doesn't sound like you have a vocation. And I was like, okay. But it was Father, I can't remember his name, but he's really political. And he always says like very ambiguous things just to stir up people. So I was like, yeah, he's just trying to make sure that whatever. 2 days later, I had another interview with a different counselor. And this was the one who was in charge of all the personnel assignments in the Legion.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody knows the need for more priests, it's going to be this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's got territorial directors on the phone every other day saying, I need 3 more priests. Where are my priests? And so he was under a tremendous amount of pressure to push people along. And he said the same thing. He was like,
Wow.
I don't think you're, it doesn't sound to me like you have a vocation based on what you said. I don't know you, but it doesn't sound like it. And I was like, wow, this is the second time I'm hearing this. I don't know how to take, I mean, I've been in this for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, wait, what I haven't heard from you, like I've heard that you want to be generous, and I heard that you love the priesthood, and I heard that you love the Legion, but I haven't heard you say that you're happy. And
Wow.
are you happy? And I was like, well, I've never asked myself that question. That's not what it's about. It's about being generous, right? Like this is a desert, and you're dragging your feet through the sand as a priest until you get to heaven and God rewards you, right? You're a pawn on a chessboard. You're probably going to get knocked off, but you won the war, right? Like and he's like, no, that's not it. You know, that is. And I had never had anyone tell me that before.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like April 3rd or whatever. On April 10th, Holy Week starts. We have a 3-day discernment course with this Jesuit who comes in. He's the guy in the Spanish-speaking world that if a priest goes into crisis, they send him to this guy, and he helps him sort it out. He's an expert on vocational discernment. And he was saying the same thing. He's like, if you're not happy, it's not going to last. Nothing violent can last. So I'm hearing it from this guy. I'm hearing it from those guys. My superiors were 100%. My direct superiors were 100% behind me. And so I by April 14th, which was Easter, like Holy Saturday, right before the Mass, that's when I finally knew like I was called to be married, not to be a priest. So super happy, incredible. I stayed on for another 4 months because that's when my vows expired anyway. Mm-hmm. And I did that month-long spiritual exercises, which is when I had to really confront the fact that I have ADHD. Oh my gosh. 30 days in silence, like trapped in my brain, guys. It was a madhouse.
Yeah.
Just like a circus going on.
And like
sounds wonderful.
All the YouTube videos I've ever seen were like running through my head. And I had a 3-day distraction that I stopped a terrorist attack at the airport. Like it was so wild.
Love those.
Not only that, the we were doing it at I don't know what they call it now, but it was the Center of Higher Studies, the big house in Rome, and it's on like an airplane route. So I see these planes passing over at like regular intervals, and I'm like, almost out of here. Yeah. But yeah, I'm happy I stayed. I think I made the right choice, and I was around. I think one of the major reasons for staying was that last 4 months was I'm going to finish what I started. I started the year of theology. I'm going to finish it. Glad I did. Because those were credits, man, that helped me a lot. And then I decided I was going to really take the time where I have no issues or concerns about money or friends or anything. Don't have to plan my weekends, cook my meals, do my laundry. It's a good life. Anyway, so I said, I got 4 months to really just deep dive and figure out what I want to do with my life. And that was great. That was really great.
That's so, yeah, you're asking a different question there. Like, how can I, be generous and do all these things, but also be happy at the same time? Like, how can these things connect, I guess?
Yeah.
That's different.
Like I thought of it like an arc, and I was thinking about everything that I did in the Legion as like a big box. And if it was positive, it went above the arc. If it was negative and I didn't like it, it went below the arc. And then I was like, okay, what made this nice? Like what made this thing great, this work? And what did I not like about it? And then the bad things, what made this so bad? And what did I actually like? What were the things I did like? And then I started connecting the dots, and it helped me realize like I want a job where I can be face to face with people, where I learn every day, where I work with a team, where I feel challenged, and not something where I'm by myself doing repetitive things over and over again. And ultimately, just reflecting on those experiences helped me choose my career, right? And it checks off all those boxes and has really helped me, flourish career-wise. I love what I do, and I'm really glad.
Yeah, that's beautiful, good. Man. That's really cool.
Because you could have suppressed all those feelings and those thoughts and been like, no, I'll keep going. This is what I'm supposed to do. And you'd be probably miserable today, but you'd still be doing it.
Yeah. Oh man. And not only like seminarians, but I see a lot of married people that it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I you should have never, not a million years, married that person. And now
Yeah.
you're all resentful and whatever. Like I see a bunch of kids, like the secular view is like starting in middle school, you got to be on like the academic team and have all these extracurriculars, and then high school gets even more busy, and then you get just to get to a college that's a little too challenging for you, to get to a job that you can't really handle, and then
Mm-hmm.
finally you end up burnt out at 32 wondering where your life went, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the system, right? I think the Catholic system is for women specifically. It's like, okay, learn to cook clean, get married as young as possible, have a ton of kids. And a lot of girls do it, right? Like I'd say like 2/3 of people don't even think about where they're headed. They just go. And then they wake up at 35 with 6 kids and a lot of regret. And it's, I wish I had really thought through where my life was heading.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm glad I had that time, and particularly business school. It was 2 years of, again, very few responsibilities, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of exposure to professionals and different career like types of work and branches of study. And I was able to say, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do. So yeah,
Now,
dating, seminary, it's worth taking the time.
I agree, man. And would you say now that you are like Catholic in like a non-traditional like sense then, or do you feel differently or
But yeah, so I think I've come to a point where well, first of all, okay, I'm Catholic. You can't doubt that.
sure.
And it's an important part of my identity. And I've made some serious life choices because of that. So, Catholic marriage, I am a member of our parish council. Okay. And I run a nonprofit for the homeless in Dallas with Mission Youth. So I'm still very involved with the Legionaries. I had 3 Legionaries at my wedding. Like I'm still very Catholic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I've learned to put in perspective a lot of the American elements of Catholicism that aren't essential to Catholicism. We have a lot of rules and a lot of like you musts
Mm-hmm.
that just aren't uh, they aren't central to what we believe as a church. And so, for example, the traditional Latin Mass, right? I can appreciate it. Like I understand Latin. I still have a Latin Bible. My Latin's awesome, but
Nice.
I don't like Latin Mass, man. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's not that I think no one should have Latin Mass, but it's just not the way God speaks to me, right? I think it would be wrong for me to say no one should have Latin Mass, just as I think it's wrong for people who go to Latin Mass to say no one should go to a vernacular Mass or like
Yeah.
a charismatic Mass or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, it's not about how you celebrate it or how it's about what's being celebrated. And I
Yeah.
think we lose sight of that very easily. So, no, I wouldn't say I'm a traditional Catholic in the sense of like all the rules and regulations. And that's actually one thing that I really admire about my wife is that, I've dated a bunch of Catholic girls that on the outside appear to be super Catholic, but in private, they were little monsters. Like, this is not, like, this is a commandment, man. Like, this is not, you are not Catholic. You
Yeah.
gotta admit you're not. Even though you have all the appearances and you wear the veil, it doesn't make you Catholic. What makes you Catholic is the creed, right? And if religion becomes something where you're checking off a list. I mean, that's the introduction to Christianity by Ratzinger, right? He says, Catholicism is not a moral code; it's an encounter with a person and the person of Jesus Christ. And so, if my Catholicism is helping me love others and love God, I'm good. That's all.
Yeah.
It's so simple, man. But if my religion is, leading me to isolate people and look down on people and think of myself as superior to people, I think I'm missing the point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting. You just made me think of the Legion in the sense that it was like really focused on encountering Christ, and it was all about that in some ways. But then it was also the checklist. Like I still remember like the conscience exam. Like, did I wake up quickly? Did I? It was like checking boxes, and also
Literally,
it was
literally.
interesting how they blended the two extremes of like
Yeah.
it's all about
Yeah,
Jesus, then it's like it's all about rules.
yeah.
What is it?
Which I really loved about the renewal, right? Because the constitutions back in the day were like 800 numbers,
Yeah.
and then we went through the reform, and it was like 120 or something. I didn't really memorize the new ones. I'm sorry, that was me.
No, it's okay. Don't
And the
worry.
whole point of the renewal was like it's not about the rules; it's about the
Yeah.
principles.
Yeah.
It's,
Mm.
I see it all the time in churches, movements, even like I admire a lot of what Protestant churches do. I think they do, let's say, the human side of religion very well, because you look at their facilities and the way they engage people and their ability to communicate, and it's amazing. Like, they do a lot better at many things than Catholic churches do. So kudos to them. But I could pick out, like, okay, you go to that church, and I can tell because you part your hair like this and you tuck your shirt in that way, and you look like you have a stick up your butt. Like, I can tell what group you feel like you pertain to based on, just like you could pick out a legionary in a crowd. And that's like an overemphasis on rules. And so I see how those rules can really hurt people, because the beauty of a spiritual principle is that, well, let's say the good side of a spiritual principle is that it gives you the freedom to choose that beautiful value in life, right? The risk is that you could go way off the deep end in the spirit of, right? So there's much more risk, right? Whereas a rule, yeah, it's restrictive. It restricts the possible downsides, but it also restricts the merit. And there are situations where the rules just don't apply. And if you lose sight of the goal for the rule, then you're hurting people. That's how I see it.
That makes sense, man.
I'll give you an example. There's a movement that I've been exposed to that claims that you can only marry somebody from that movement, right? That's the rule, and that's what everybody says. And I'm like, what? Because, yeah, I get the point. The point is, you want to marry a spouse who's going to support you in your values, right? That's important. But not everybody in your movement is going to support your values, and not everybody outside of your movement won't support your values. So I see where the rule came from, but now it's become such a rule that the actual point isn't communicated anymore. And no matter what type of organization you're in, when you switch from culture to rules, you're headed towards a toxic and self-destructive culture. Yeah, I see a lot of businesses like that, by the way.
Interesting.
Oh yeah. I mean, even a marriage, if all it is like, I have to bring her flowers every week or she's going to be angry. It's like, that's not a healthy marriage, man. Great, give her flowers, but the point is to be spontaneous and surprise her and be romantic and thoughtful, right? That's the point. And if it becomes, I got to do check, 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 then, it's the same as those conscience exams in the apostolic school. I even remember, as an apostolic, I'm a docile guy. I'll do it. When I was reading through, I'm like, I don't even have this issue. Why am I checking this off every single night?
Yeah. And then at the end of the month, you'd be like, I guess I did it well this whole month. And then you just go to the next card and you just fill it, check. It was like homework.
I was doing that since I was in ECYD at 11 years old. I always had like a card with a checklist. Yeah. Man.
I think I'm really enjoying your take on the goals and values. I've been thinking about this a lot in my personal life, of like getting away from caring so much about the outcome of things. Like, if I want to be a writer, detaching from the end goal and just saying, well, the value I want to espouse is authenticity and expressing myself. So how can I do that today and not give a shit how this ends up way down the line, So I'm really digging what you're saying here with that, the rules being less important.
That was kind of the opposite of what I was saying, but
oh shit!
Like,
I completely missed the mark. I'm so glad you didn't courteously agree with me. Thank you. No.
It's related. So the rule.
I'm dead. I'm gonna go now.
So let's say, Spencer, you added another level, right? So there's identity, value, and rule. If your rule was, I'm going to write a paragraph every day, and you do it, you might never become a writer.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're just fulfilling a rule if you've lost the sight of why. If your value is, I want to become a good writer, that's important to you. Okay, great. Stay focused on that. The rules are to serve that end goal, right? But identity, I want to be an authentic, creative, expressive person. I want to spread, the truth of things, and I want to learn from others. Okay, maybe it's writing today. Maybe in 20 years, you become a journalist and you're in war-torn Ukraine, because that's probably still going to be going on.
Yeah.
And you're like, showing people what's happening and raising awareness. That's just as authentic as writing, right? And might still respond to who you are as a person. So yeah, you added the identity cap. I wasn't even telling you.
Yeah.
Love it though. I love it. That was
I was
enriching.
like, I'm gonna have to edit this in post because it doesn't. It's confusing me. Well, I was just in Cheshire a week ago, last Friday, and I was really impressed with how little they cared about those external markers instead of
Yeah.
just being like, no, we're trying to be holy and we're trying to be Catholic
Yeah.
seminarians, like, and there were only 7 novices, which is not none of us can relate to that. We like that's
No.
mind blowing that the whole
Yeah.
community, the whole
Yeah, no.
Cheshire community is like maybe 80 total.
Mhm. And a lot of internationals, I'm guessing.
And it's all because there's only one humanities.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
Cheshire, so everyone in the Legion goes through Cheshire.
Hmm.
And I was just like, well, some of the 2 of the novices showed me around to see what changed. And the only thing that really changed was like the RC room.
And the windows. But
Yeah, and the
besides...
windows. Yeah. There was no draft, which was nice. But this winter has been easy. They don't even understand what it's like to be cold.
Yeah.
It's been below freezing maybe twice this year. It's awful. I hate this winter. But they were like they were happy. They were like just
Yeah.
doing their thing, and I'm like,
Right.
oh man, they were asking me what was it like when there were so many people here? Like, it must have been awesome. I'm like, yeah, it was okay, but it was a way different culture. Like, it wasn't the same kind of, like, it's not healthy. It wasn't healthy. Now,
Oh man, we had a purge in Rome. I don't know if you heard about this, but
really,
oh man, the news of the founder broke. We started the year with 500 brothers. Okay. So so this is like 2012.
2000, oh, okay.
2010 the news broke, right? Is that right?
2009.
2009, okay.
Nine.
2009 February somewhere. Oh yeah, you're right. Okay. So 2009 the news broke. And I got to Rome in 2010. And
Okay.
we had heard so many things about Rome. And yeah, when we first got there, I was like, oh my gosh, we have like 2 almost semi-Olympic pools. They were like 1 meter shorter than 25 because if it was 25, it'd have to be a public pool. So anyway, 2 24-meter
okay.
pools. Clever.
Yeah,
We had,
yeah.
we're up on a hill. We had like all these buildings. We had our own like beautiful chapel. We had our own gas station. We had our own street cleaner. Like, it was like its own. They call it the priest city, right? Like, it was, bro. We had a gas station. Anyway,
That's crazy.
yeah, they shut
That's
it down.
crazy.
because we were too
I
broke.
guess it
But
makes sense,
anyway,
but
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we have
the
all those
operation
buses.
was big.
Yeah, it was big. It was a big thing. I mean, there were 500 brothers at the house at the time, but there was a group of brothers. I was rose-colored glasses, so excited to be in Rome, and 21 years old. And there was a group of brothers that, when the news broke, they didn't hear it from their superiors; they heard it from the paper, right? So, and especially where they were, there was a lot more Legion influence. So it was rough, and immediately they stopped trusting in their superiors because why wouldn't you tell me this, right? Which I get it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I sit down, oblivious because I was just a little sheep. I sit down on a hike, right? We took this hike to this. I don't know if you ever went to the hikes in Rome, but it's this place called Cherry, and it's like just a big park, and there's like trash everywhere because it's Italy. But
Yeah, it's Rome.
yeah, I mean, it's just like public parking everywhere. But anyway, big park. We just set up volleyball nets, and they bring like picnic tables with no legs, and we just like sort the food on these picnic tables, and you just pick one up and you walk over and you form a ring around the picnic table, right? So that was our hike. But there was the fathers had, they would have tables with actual table legs, and poor fathers are like 60 years old. They shouldn't be sitting cross-legged on the, but anyway, so only the father's table had these chairs, except for one brother. And he was kind of like the ringleader, I found out later. I sit down in the circle with them, and they said, what's your name? And I'm like, Kevin. And they said, okay, have you been on internship? I was like, no, I'm here for my first year. And did you go to the apostolic school? I was like, yeah. And then they just physically, I kid you not, they physically closed the circle and excluded me from the conversation.
No
And I was,
way.
yeah. And this was when I thought the whole world was like full of unicorns and butterflies. So it was,
Yeah.
that was my first. That was the first time ever I felt like I'd been excluded from anything in the Legion because universal charity and I made the effort. Like there were brothers that I hated, man, and I folded their laundry every day without them knowing because I hated them so much. And I'm like, I can't do this right now because I hate this guy.
Dang it! I thought people were just being nice to me. No,
Yeah, I was wondering who was folding.
I was wondering, man. Yeah.
Yeah, James, that was me. That was me. No, I'm joking. But yeah, like I delivered this guy's shirts. That was like the worst thing because you have to go through a rack of like 100 brothers' shirts, and they didn't put them in order, so you got to find, Anyway, like we really made an effort for universal charity. These guys are excluding me, and I was like, oh man, and I just sat there by myself the whole hike. That was my first experience of like something's not right. Well, anyway, this group of brothers, and this is, Spencer, this is like rural city at the time. Okay. This is when things were strict. I don't know how they did this, but somehow they got money. They were buying beer, right? And they'd meet in the basement and drink, or like go to a brother's room and watch a movie, right? And this is when we watch 6 movies a year. So they're watching movies like every other night in a different brother's room. Superiors weren't corrected. They wouldn't come to community mass. They didn't come to community meals. They were like their own thing, and everybody was kind of like, "What's going on?" So, long story short, that was a very long story, but short version or summary anyway. We were 500 brothers at the beginning of the year. By the end of the year, we were 280, and I think something like maybe 100 of those were people who asked to be relocated or go on a second internship just to get away from it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, there were a good 100, 120 that left that year. Wow. And I was just studying my philosophy. I read the works of Aristotle, full works. I read the works of Socrates and Aquinas and all these people. Plato, not Socrates, Plato. Yeah. But yeah, so I love philosophy. I was just in my room studying. I had no idea what was going on. But then by like February of 2012, I guess, we kind of looked around and we're like, this isn't the Legion we want. And so we kind of banded back together. All those brothers were obviously gone, right? They didn't last a year. Yeah. But a lot of damage, man. A lot of damage. So that was probably the lowest point, I think, vocationally, with the Legion's health.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry. I was always wondering what happened after like 2010 because the culture shifted and
for sure.
And like they came out the other side, and it seems like they weathered the storm in a way. Like it really does seem like it's hard to make the case now that they need to be like the Legion needs to be disbanded or reintegrated into other communities. Like it's kind of like, okay, they're kind of a thing now where it's like this is healthy for most of them, and it seems like they're getting on their feet. But
well, let me say this: like if you had a terrible experience in the Legion and you are convinced that it needs to be disbanded, I totally empathize with that. Like I think that what a lot of people went through was unfair. And, I also know, like I had a net very positive experience. I love my time and I left well, but I know not everybody had that experience. And to me, like now knowing what I know, I wish I had been more perceptive of what other people were going through, especially like, how can I be in the Legion for 9 years and I'm on my way to internship and I see another brother who's been in the Legion for 9 years and we've been in the same house for 9 years and we've never had a full conversation, we were really isolated. And I think we really could have been there for each other more. But so I empathize. For those who feel that, I empathize. But what I saw, because I left in 2017, 2010 was really a low point. There's no doubt there. I think we had to face ourselves in the mirror. The renewal process was brutal. A lot of people left. A lot of people left angry, which I understand. And the ones that, it's not a superstar order anymore. I joined because we were John Paul II's whatever, or because we were the fastest growing congregation, whatever. It's like, no, legionaries are not superstars. They're human beings. And the whole experience for me really humanized the legionaries. There are some legionaries I love. And, again, I had legionaries celebrate my wedding. There's other legionaries that I'm like, yeah, man, I don't owe you anything, right? Like, I'm not, you're a human being and you treated me like not a human being.
Yeah.
I don't know what rating your podcast has here, so I'm moderating my language. But anyway,
No, it's we use explicit language, but we also let the guests choose what they want. How explicit they want to get.
okay. Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Just because you have a collar on doesn't mean you get to be an asshole. You're still a human being,
yeah.
right? I've learned that I can't be just open and with every Legionary or Regnum Christi member just because they're in the movement. Like, there's still a relationship and healthy boundaries that need to be placed based on how the relationship goes. Anyway, that aside, 2010 was rough. My internship, I really saw the Legion change while I was on internship. My first year, I got to a community where, besides like a quick lunch on Sunday, maybe a 2-hour lunch, I never really saw the community, and I felt very, very alone, right? And a lot of brothers that had come through that community had ended up leaving because I think they were experiencing, a lot of zeal and a lot of prayer and a lot of mission, but very little like brotherhood and community. And that's not what, if you're called to be a religious, you're called to like fraternity. And so they realized, oh, seminary was great, but then, out here, it's like, you know, I feel like every single person is like a Jack Ryan or what's his name, Bauer from 24, Jack Bauer.
Yeah,
Jack
yeah,
Bauer is like a one-man show, right? Like, that's not what I want to be.
yeah,
So
yeah.
my first year was really rough. I broke down and cried like 3 or 4 times,
Nice.
just because I felt so like alone. Like, I have no father figure. I feel very just off on my own, and so much is being asked of me, and I'm getting so little back. Which is where that like dragging your feet through the sand in the desert image kind of came from. That was my experience. But then the community got together, and part of this was us reading through the renewal documents and the points, fraternal life and spirituality and spiritual principles over rules, and decentralization of authority, and a lot of these initiatives that they were running. We talked about those, and we decided as a community, you know what? No, we are gonna make this happen. We are gonna commit to our community, and so we are gonna, Sunday night we all get home for dinner. We're gonna, order pizza because everybody loves pizza. Jet's Pizza was the best in the area. We had a community meeting, so we planned all the masses for the week, and we got that out of the way. And then we watched, Sunday night football. Sunday night football in America with Dungy and all that, and it was so great. And then the next day it was just community time. We'd wake up later. We'd go to a park and play disc golf. We'd play Catan in the afternoon. We'd watch a show in the evening. Like, it was, and it was there was no apostolate on that Monday. So that shift, like, and I was like, this is awesome. And then I went back to the DG, right, to the general directorate, where they're running the show, and I get access to a file that's like, the program guide calendar, or like whatever, our plan to enact the renewal in all of our communities. And it was like all the things that I was so proud of that my community had done, that I was like, I'm going to get back to Rome and I'm going to bring this to everybody. I'm going to tell them about it. Everybody had the same experience. It's like, you should have seen what my community did. And I was like, what? No, but my community did that too. So I get this document and it shows boom, 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 boom. From the very top, they were pushing these things to the communities, right? And you saw the effect. So part of my discernment story that I told you is like, I really thought that maybe I was just uncomfortable with the situation and my vocation, or I was kind of uncertain because the Legion was going through so much. But by the time we got back to 2017, it felt so positive and hopeful and, exciting again to be a Legionary. And I'm looking around and I see, okay, the guys that fought through this together, they're solid guys, and even the ones that left. I'm not saying anything about the ones that left, but I know they're here because they want to be here, right? And I know the ones who left. Some left because they wanted to leave. Others left because, frankly, I think the Legion did a really bad job at being itself. And so, if I'm called to be a Legionary and the Legion is a mess, I'm leaving, right? It wasn't what it should have been. So, I was just really glad that I got to see a lot of the negative trends change in a way that was convincing to me, at least. And that never had to really be a factor in my discernment. I got to look back and say I made a clean break, and it's just one less doubt factor, right? Because after 14 years, if you're thinking about leaving, a lot of people think you're crazy. Because they're like, I even had a monk tell me that, like a Benedictine monk just came up and said, after 14 years of religious life, you're called. How could you not be called? That's ridiculous.
Wow.
Right? My mom really had a hard time with me leaving because, and I was trying to explain, Mom, I did month-long spiritual exercises. I had 2 superiors behind this. I had 4 spiritual directions. I did 4 extra months. It was in the Holy Week, spiritual discernment course, at a good time in the Legion with a great superior and a healthy community. Speaking of rules, by the way, we're not supposed to tell the brothers from the Center of Higher Studies this, but in the Dental Directorate, for like Easter week, like during the octave, we'd pray night prayers at like 7, and then we'd go upstairs and we'd have like some type of cocktail, like we had Jello shots and like cocktails, game night, and father would say, "All right, brothers, look, no curfew, no, you just do whatever you want. Mass is at 12 in the afternoon tomorrow, so just be there for mass," right? And that's how we lived our octave. Totally different.
Nice.
We had beach. When we got to Rome, we went to the beach, and we were there till 3 a.m. with a bonfire playing the ball. Like, it was so nice.
Dude, was it weird though, like literally overnight transitioning from like, you're going to play board games once a year at Christmas during Fusion to like, we're playing board games every week. We're partying till 3 a.m. at a bonfire. How weird was that?
I mean, first of all, I had hoped that I'd finally finish a game of Axis and Allies, right? Because
yeah. I know
no kidding.
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of things that were very restrictive, and when those were finally peeled away, I'll tell you what, my year in Rome, my superior, he told me like the second day I got there, whatever. Father Ignacio, shout out to Father Ignacio, sorry, great superior, but he said, "Brother, I'm not going to be following up on you. I'm way too lazy for that.
Nice.
If you want to be a legionary, be a legionary. Just go to prayers, like show up, like be a legionary. But if you're here to fool around, just be honest with yourself." And I was like, wow, that's, it was the first time in my legionary life that I was not like afraid to show up late, to not make it at 5:45 for morning prayer. We woke up at 5:05 in the DG. It was insane.
Yeah.
Man, every day. But we slept in on the weekends till 5:15. So
nice. Hey,
you got a little crazy there.
But to be fair, I do wake up at 3 a.m. almost every morning, and
for morning
voluntarily for morning prayers. No, for work, but
and that's great. That means you're crazy, but it's great.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I also remember, like, I hated waking up early in the Legion. I hated it. Yeah. And now that I have the free, like,
it was like lights on and you're screaming.
Mm-hmm. Get your bathing suit on, everybody.
Everybody's like in the hallway, craziness.
Crazy.
But now I do need that kind of like the gunshot wake up. So I do have my Google Assistant set up so that it turns on my lights, it turns on the music, it just starts shouting podcasts at me, and I have no choice but to get up and
wow.
Get ready.
I bought a dog that's just as effective.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever works, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was early.
That's too early though for studying and for prayers and stuff. That's too early.
What was it? 5:40 morning, 5:30. Yeah, and it was like a very very tight schedule, and for the first 3 months there, I was late all the time, and I was like, he's not following up on me. This is the first time I'm not afraid not to show up, and that finally, once that kind of fear of not, showing up or not fulfilling a lot of the exterior things, as soon as that fear was gone, I realized, like, man, I wanted to respond. I wanted to be responsible for my calling. And I was like, I just can't motivate myself. Like, I don't want to, and we were recording. So I was playing trumpet back at the time. And I also picked up like French horn and some other things. So we were recording some music for like masses. Like I got to play at the ordinations, and then we'd like record CDs with one of the consecrated women. And she was older, so there was nothing going on, right? But she said, "Hey, can you come over once a week to help us record vocals and some instrumentals on this music that I'm writing. And so I talked to my superior and I was like, Father Ignacio, I have this opportunity. I'd love to help out. And he said, brother, you're behind on your apostolate. You're behind on your study plan. Like, why are you going to add one more thing? Take a day, think about it, and then make a proposal. So I did. Came back to him the next day and I said, look, let's make it a motivation, right? Instead of an issue. So if I get to Friday and I'm on task with my studies and I'm on task with my apostolate, then I go. If not, I cancel. And I set that expectation from the very beginning. And he said, okay, sounds reasonable. And it was like hitting a switch, right? I was like, I had 2,000 pages of assigned reading for theology that semester. And, I was behind, like I had like a 200-page deficit. First week I'm ahead like 400 pages. And I'm working in the art. It was the most boring thing. And then bam, I have an empty inbox for the first time in my, and it just kept going. And I was like, this, 60-year-old consecrated woman is my motivation. I'm more motivated to be there for her than I am to fulfill my God-given mission and love for Christ and all those things. Like, that wasn't a motivator for me. And so when I look back on it, I was like, yeah, I was really motivated to be there for someone, specifically a woman. I didn't care about anybody else, honestly, but like to be there for this person, do something for her, and like a pure, nothing crazy, but just for her. And it made me think, like, maybe this isn't my mission if I'm not intrinsically motivated here. So yeah, it was definitely a transition to go from very strict to having a lot more bandwidth. But I think it was accompanied by a lot of study. And instead of doing like, the encounter with Christ and team balance, we just talk about, the renewal and what the principles of the renewal were and how we can live them better. And that community reflection, I think, drove a lot of change in a lot of members, right? And I can't do a full-scale judgment that the Legion is squeaky clean now. That's the point. The Legion's not squeaky clean, but they recognize that they're not squeaky clean, and I think there's good faith that they're really trying to, do better and grow. And that's really all you can ask from anyone is, are you gonna, the ones that are staunchly saying we're perfect, they're the worst people in the room, honestly. And get away from them as fast as you can, because they're going nowhere fast and they're tearing everybody down with them. So yeah, I think in my personal experience, which was positive, I wish I had been there for the ones that were suffering. I wish I'd noticed. And so I'm sorry for that. But I did see some real change. And that's why I still associate with the Legionaries and Regnum Christi. Not because it's comfortable and because I have no friends otherwise, but because, I think they've learned to shed a lot of the crust of rules and toxicity, and the values that remain are motivate me to be a better person.
That's really cool. Have you found a brotherhood of your own outside of the Legion to because I kind of, sometimes miss that fraternity that we had. Have you found any way to replace it? I mean, you have your family,
yeah,
sure, but...
And this is my number one advice for people who are just leaving the Legion: get a hobby, man. Like, really find a hobby, because I did a thing, I'm glad that I made this choice, but I did a thing where I'd try 5 hobbies every year, right? Like, I want to learn to fix cars. I want to learn to sail. I want to learn to, and I started with like the low cost ones, like, learning to fix your own car saves you money. So that's a good one to try. And then all of a sudden you start talking to people who do their own work, and you meet mechanics, and, if it's something you really like, then you naturally connect with people, right? I got into rock climbing in the last year. I picked up boxing at Notre Dame. That was one of my hobbies. And that one stuck, and a lot of great guys for the boxing club. Like the guy I fought, my final fight, I had 12 fights. I went 10-2. The last fight was a loss in the tournament. And the dude was the president of the boxing club. He'd been boxing for 4 years. He taught me everything I knew. So yeah, he destroyed me, but I did get a really nice hook shot in, and he was hearing bells for like 3 days. So I was happy. Like, it was great. That fraternity was really cool. I definitely recommend that if you're leaving the Legion, pursue hobbies. It's so worth it. I think it fills out your personality. You're not just an ex-seminarian. You're a lot more than that. You got to discover it. And if you don't know who you are and what you like, it's very hard for you to commit yourself to someone else and know that they're compatible if you're going to go through all of these changes, right? I promised myself I wouldn't date for 6 months out of the Legion. I lasted like 4, but I waited 4 months after I knew I was leaving. So I don't know. But anyway, that was a very bad relationship because from, the first, it only lasted 2.5 months, but in those 2.5 months, I changed so much. She was no longer dating the same person, than when she started. So hobbies are great because they put you in touch with the natural circle and help you understand a little bit more who you are, and fill out your personality a little bit. Because marrying a Catholic spouse was the most important thing to me. But there's so much more to a person. A person's an entire universe, and getting to know the person and really seeing that they're a fit for me, I don't think I could have done 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was only in ICUS for 4 years, and then I was in Cheshire for about less than a month. And just it was like I started to waffle, and then I told my spiritual director that I was, or my superior and my spiritual director, because that's how things were back then.
Yeah, right.
That I was waffling, and then I heard from another priest that he called to say, "Hey, I heard you're like doubting or whatever." I'm like, "Okay, they're talking about stuff, spiritual direction.
Yep, that did it.
I'm out of here."
Yep.
So, but then like for I think 5 months, 6 months, I was just like trying to figure out like, okay, what do I like? What's what do I do? I don't know what to do. Like I did like my friends from town were still in high school. Like I you finish a year early at ICUS. So I didn't even I couldn't even hang out with friends because that would be creepy, like hanging out at high school, like when you graduated. Like that's weird. So I was like I had nothing to do, and then I went to community college, and that was great. But if you don't have hobbies, if you don't have things to do, it's just like, who are you? It's like, well, I was in a seminary for a little bit, and they're like, okay, that's cool. What do you do now? Like, I don't do anything now. I just think about that.
It's two-dimensional. We watched La La Land. Okay, in
Great
the general.
movie.
Wow, really?
I know, right? I was like, wow, and especially because I knew I was gonna head towards marriage at that time. I was so excited. But anyway,
okay.
I took up dancing as one of my hobbies.
Nice.
Like I learned swing. There's a great swing community wherever you go. They're really, really chill people. Swing. I learned like merengue, bachata, salsa, and all that. And then I married a Latina. So,
Awesome.
And they had
We've
the
all
dollar.
been there, except for Jacob hasn't.
Oh, so great. Yeah, great. It was a great. It's worth like really pursuing your interest because you haven't had the time. Although they do a lot better at like, I see brothers posting like, "Hey, I just recorded this on saxophone." They built him a recording studio in Rome, or like, I love archery, and there's this father that would like, he was a professor, but he would always just walk out and he'd be there with his, reflex bow, just shooting arrows. So like they've gotten better at allowing for hobbies. You learn a lot of skills, but like free time used to be looked down upon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hobbies are important. They'll get you a natural group of friends. But the other one thing I will say about brotherhood is, I saw this at Notre Dame with the Military Veterans Club. They'd sit down. They were super. I'm not going to say cliquey, but they understood each other. And like I sat down with them and like, oh yeah, there was some insurgents and they were coming right at the gate, and we had some Afghan troops that we had trained, and yeah, they took them out real quick. But yeah, we had the kill zone set up, and we had them pounded. And they're just telling their experience, like their war experiences, and I'm like, oh shit, like yeah, and they're like mowing people down, and then they're all just in a circle, like, oh yeah, I've been there, whatever. Like they understand each other on a level that we never will.
Yeah,
and I think it's the same for legionaries.
Yeah,
like I'm an ex-legionary. That's part of my identity. It's a small piece, and so even though like James, Spencer, Jacob, we haven't interacted that much, I understand a part of you that many people won't.
It's true.
Most people, right? So there's a true and real brotherhood that we have that is extremely unique, especially because we went through some really stupid shit. Like,
yeah,
didn't we?
it's fun to look back and say, damn, like that was kind of weird. That was dumb, but we did it. We did it, and I get that, and nobody will ever understand. And that's okay. They just weren't. You had to be there. So I went to a wedding of one of my ex-legionary buddies, and there were like 6 ex-legionaries there, and that was actually funny because we were all very white, except for one guy. We were all very white. We're up on the rooftop after the rehearsal dinner on this rooftop bar in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This group of Latinas walk up, and we all switched to absolutely perfect Spanish, and they were so weirded out that they just left. Like they're like, what is happening?
Gringos.
Yeah, like and like all of us spoke maybe some accent and whatever, but yeah, it was all perfect Spanish. So yeah, that's just a legionary thing. It's like it's part of who we are.
Yeah.
Even though we're all in different stages of life, right? One guy was a straight up atheist, had not been back into a church since he left the Legion, which, hearing his story, I completely understand, right? Another guy, agnostic, practically, a couple very liberal, liberal. We say liberal, and
it's such an innocuous. It does, yeah. I know what you mean.
So,
though.
In other words, we're all across the spectrum, but it didn't matter, because we're brothers, and we went through it together, and we all, we started a chat group, and we stay in touch, and it's a good group of guys. There are people that. So one of the reasons I came to Dallas is because I knew there was a bunch of ex-legionaries here, and so I've got some great friends. There's other ex-legionaries that I had to cut off, that have gone off the deep end, right? Or that they were naive in the Legion and they kind of drank the Kool-Aid, and now they're naive out of the Legion and still drinking Kool-Aid. So I'm more of a bourbon guy, so we're not going to mix well, and you're out of my life.
Yeah, different flavors.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I think brotherhood through hobbies is important, and also discovering who you are. But I think we have a special bond, and that won't change.
That's beautiful.
No, I do think that that's something that we all share in a similar way with veterans, how they can all talk to each other and be like, oh, where were you? And they just start rambling off numbers and acronyms. And then we have our own really weird terms that don't make sense.
Vacations. Been on vacations lately.
Yeah.
Oh man, so many crazy things.
Yeah.
And just like the idea.
Human respect, brother.
Yeah.
Human respect.
Charity, human respect. What else is there?
I haven't heard that before.
Which sounds like a very good thing to do to people, respect them, but apparently not.
Yeah, if you don't have human respect, they beat you up. That's how things work.
Yeah.
Go ask the war veterans. Yeah.
You're just murdering people, and you're like, I have no human respect. And it is kind of funny because I don't know how many times you dated before you found the one.
For relationships, a lot of dates.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I
mean, you don't know.
How did you ever because sometimes you get to the point in a relationship where you're like, oh, I've probably got to explain this at some point, right? Like you got to be like, hey, so I was in this thing. Okay. It's happened more than once where it they're like, why were you in Hampshire? It's like, oh, well, it was a school. Okay.
Let me tell you.
And that was always awesome.
I'll just tell one story before I ask for your response. But one of my boys, who actually is a supporter of this podcast, he's the only supporter. He pays $5 a month, and I love him. He was in Brooklyn for a little bit, with his then fiance, and I was like, hey, let's hang out. You're in Brooklyn. I had no idea. So we were hanging out. We were talking. We were smoking a little weed. And his fiance was asking questions, and then we just started talking about the Legion, and she was like, oh my gosh, he's hinted at this stuff, but I never believed it was true. and we just started talking, and more memories started coming back to him, and he started telling more stories, and she's like, I've never heard any of these stories. We're like, when more of us congregate, we get more powerful. We remember more things, and we start and it was just so funny. But I mean, I don't know, have you ever had that where you just have to go into it and be like,
okay, well, the first mistake that I made dating was leading with that. It was on my man, I am matching with some very it's like this. It's like I'm dating the same woman over and over and over and over and over again. It was like very, very similar crowd. So I stopped doing it. It wasn't something that I ever hid, but usually it would come up within a day, like within the
Right.
first day. And I think I, I noticed. Well, it shifted with my identity too. Like when I first left, I was an ex-legionary, and that was kind of it. And I didn't know much more about myself than that, and so that's how I introduced myself. Um, even professionally, like try interviewing with some of these Fortune 500 companies, and your resume says like camp director, school mentor,
Yeah.
uh, you know,
Chaperone.
Yeah. No, don't worry, don't worry. It was a cult. It was a cult. I'm okay. Like,
yeah, no, yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah, you're hired. Yeah.
But believe it or not, I've found that. Okay, so let me give you my current job. Um, I make great money. I'm very, very satisfied. I feel very valued. I'm growing a lot, and it's business consulting. And some of these guys are really high powered. They work hard weeks. I work like 40, 45, 50 at the most. So I'm really glad. Like I got the work life balance. I got the pay I want. I got the job I want. Interviewing for this job was so tough. Like even just getting interviews, they look at my resume and they're like, "What is Pontifico Athenaeum Regina Pastoral? Like what the hell? Yeah, like what did this guy study?" Notre Dame definitely helped, but like they're still looking at it. My current boss. Okay, I had a 30-minute conversation with him. I was just getting to know him, and I kind of told him. I don't think I'd even sent him my resume or anything, but we had a conversation. I told him why I wanted to be a consultant, what my values were, how my values fit with the firm, some of the work I've done, and that type of thing. And he said, hey, just real quick before we close the call, give me your elevator pitch. Like, what's your 30-second like background? And I said, well, I was studying to be a missionary. And what I loved about it was that I really got to help people, but I felt like I wasn't having the impact that I should. In the end, it didn't work out for me. So I'm looking for a job where I can focus on making others' work life better, but have the type of impact that is gonna move the lever and really change people's lives. And his response was, "Oh my gosh, that's perfect! Like if you can run around the world trying to make people like selling Jesus, you can definitely sell profitability and efficiency and things like that." And I said, "Yeah." He said, and so when he introduced me to the company, he said, "Hey, my name's Kevin. I was studying to be a priest before. These were my reasons. This is why I'm moving on, etc." He stopped me and he said, "Hey guys, I want you to realize that we're consultants. Our job is to help others grow and see them succeed. We are missionaries. If you don't see yourself as a missionary, like Kevin was, you don't belong in this company." And I was like, dang, this is like the CEO of, a serious business. We do millions in revenue every year. And I'm like, man, this is exactly where I belong. So I've found that, I don't lead with it because it's not all of who I am, but I'm very open about it. And
Mhm.
it's helped me find um, a niche where I'm flourishing. I think if it were something I was trying to keep in the closet, uh, you know, I wouldn't be where I wouldn't be as comfortable with my life as I am. Like it or not, it's marked you.
Yeah.
It's who we are. Unfortunately, unlike a military veteran, there's no like VA or like
Yeah. There's no
like
there's no real
you,
benefit.
you don't get tax cuts or like you don't get to
Yeah.
get on the plane first or
Yeah.
you don't. People aren't like thank you for your service. They're like
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
what.
like no 10% off on Tuesdays at groceries. Like, yeah, I
Hmm.
understand. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
There's none of that.
Can't check that off on my taxes.
Yeah.
It's a different world. But I do think that there's a lot of value that we can bring out of our past, and that it's it's different. I think it's something that people don't normally encounter, and I know through philosophy especially, but all the studies that I see things very differently than others, and that's really valued in the line of work that I'm in. So yeah, it's been an asset. And I don't feel the need to hide it. And that's coming from somebody who had a great experience, right? If it was something very painful for me, then that's totally different. That's a very different story.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everyone has their story, and that's the beauty of this podcast. I don't know. Do either Spencer or Jacob? Do you guys have any other questions?
I'm sure I do somewhere, but I think this has been a great time to reconnect,
Yeah,
brother.
this was.
Yeah.
I couldn't have expected it to go this well. Just because I was like, God, I don't. All I remember is that he played the trumpet really well. And, like,
You were like out of material in the first 20 seconds.
Yeah, I'm like,
I probably have the best memory because I just remember being like, oh man, he's killing it up there as the cantor. Like that's like my one memory that stands out.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
you gave great
remember
talks
that.
too at like the Eucharistic encounters or the there were different talks you gave that were very good that I remember. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you have anything you want to say before we end the recording, Kevin?
I mean, no. I'm kind of sad you only have one supporter.
Well, it's we just started upping our quality recently, and we don't really like plug it seriously as like, hey, could you support us? Because a lot of ex-legionaries are struggling financially. So I don't want to ask people for,
including some of us on this podcast,
including maybe 30% of this podcast. No, I'm kidding. It's more like 60% probably. If I'm being honest.
No, but I do love reconnecting with ex-legionaries, and I think there's a space to do it, especially where it's like a non-judgmental, like everybody's experience is everybody's experience, and I can't tell you what you should have felt or not felt. And I wouldn't want anybody to feel like because I have a positive experience, it somehow calls into question what they went through, because we all, it hit us all differently, and that's okay, right? But we're brothers, and we've all, even though we're all, headed in different directions and maybe have fallen on different, maybe different ends of the Catholicism spectrum, or even just religion spectrum, we're brother. We're headed different places, but we all have the same, kind of experience. We've been through it together, so there's value here.
Absolutely.
So I
for sure.
love what you guys are doing. I appreciate it, and so thanks for the opportunity.
If anyone wants to, any one of our listeners who remembers you wants to contact you, what's the best social media or way to contact you? LinkedIn,
probably Instagram, probably Instagram, LinkedIn, either one.
Okay.
Instagram, LinkedIn.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if anyone from your generation actually listens to our.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not current. Like, I haven't heard people talk about it.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just grateful that you came on, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
And honestly, like, I would do anything for a legionary brother. So like an ex-legionary. So I have people reach out to me every now and then. They're business school. How'd you do that? Or what's your career like, and things. I'm happy to help out any way I can. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys, for hosting.